Well, hello. Pastor Ray Barnett here. Glad you can be with me for another edition of God's Answers for Anxiety and Depression. This is the special edition that I try to get in on Saturdays, called The Stories of My Life. It's a personal anecdote, something that actually happened to me or I went through, and try to relate it to our subject of anxiety, depression, and mental health disorders. But first, let me wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching these broadcasts. Now, I'm sitting here once again under a fantastically shaded area. The sun just over here is hot. I don't know, now it's about 85, 6, 7 degrees. And I have mentioned so frequently what a beautiful summer this has been in 2020. God is always good, and you will see that goodness as you walk with Him, trusting Him. Anyway, it's a beautiful spot I have here. Again, for those of you who are with me on a fairly regular basis, you know that we have some unusual interruptions quite frequently. But so far so good. Yesterday went well. Let's see how today goes. Well, as I was sitting here just getting myself prepared to do this lesson, I was thinking to myself that everybody has a story. Stories. Everybody has something to relate, in my opinion, that is of interest to anybody who's looking to find, well, I don't know, it's sort of like the way I like biographies, especially autobiographies. People are telling their story, and I can read almost anybody's biography. There are some exceptions of biographies I won't read, because everybody has a story to tell, and you can learn a lot. Even reading on, quote, bad guys, you learn what not to do, learn what mistakes not to make, which ways not to think. Anyway, I was just thinking to myself that everybody has stories. Everybody's life has stories in them that have value to other people. Okay, so I picked an incident from my life that happened exactly 51 years ago. I started boxing as a kid, and I was about 15. And I did it for about 5 years. I was an amateur fighter. Had a lot of potential. I was being looked at after I got a little bit older, especially around 18 or so. I was looked at by some very serious trainers in the area. And anyway, some of them had some very high hopes for me as far as going through the amateur ranks, turning professional, and taking it from there. Honestly, I don't know how much of it was hype, but in those days, I was always blessed with a lot of strength, physical strength, and most things came easy for me, such as they have in music. Genetically, I was, and I still am, strong, and unlike some people who are, very quick with their feet, I mean, they're just fast. My speed was in my hands, very, very quick. And to combine that with the fact that I never got tired, I could just go for hours, literally, and just not fatigue and a lot of physical strength. I got to give a lot of credit to my trainer, the one who started me off. He was very, very good and taught me technique perfect. So I carried that with me through the years, my early years of life. But when I was first starting out, another thing about my training and my trainer, I don't recall ever fighting with someone, whether it was sparring or some type of exhibition fight, which was, you know, just there's no, it's not, you don't keep a record of your exhibition fights. I don't ever recall fighting anybody who was ever less than I was. They were always men, primarily men who were retired professional fighters. So figure out someone, let's say at the time in their 40s, retired from professional fighting and then taking on some kid, 8th and 9th grade. It wasn't always a pleasant experience, but as he used to always tell me, when I was taking a beating, you're getting an education. Then when I did fight young people who were closer to my age, they were either 2-3-time Golden Glove champions and national champions, and that's how I got my education in boxing. So when I first started out around the age of 15, it started out by me asking my trainer, who became my trainer, if he would just show me some things about boxing, because he had fought as definitely as an amateur. I don't recall professional, but he had a lot of fights and a lot of experience, and I just was asking him to kind of show me things so I could defend myself in the street. And he agreed. It started out with just him and I, and then as we went along, he got this idea of turning it into a boxing club and getting more people. So at one point we used to train on Friday nights, and at one point, all of a sudden, this group of men, young men, but they were men, walk in, and they're all new. I forget exactly how many of them there were, but let's say 5, all from the Bronx, and all of them steel workers. So get the idea of men who are on a job working with steel, you know, big brawny guys in their early 20s, 25, 26 years old, and me, 15-year-old, kind of. I wasn't skinny, but I wasn't an imposing figure either. And eventually, you know, he would have them training with each other, and I was kind of off to the side here. Then one night, for whatever reason, my trainer put me in. By the way, our ring at the time was composed of a concrete floor, and then he had some posts rigged up that he had made. He had them welded. And rope. I mean, it wasn't exactly ideal, especially if you hit the floor. It was all concrete. Anyway, one night he decides to match me up with the strongest and I'll say toughest member of this group of these steel workers. If I recall right, my estimation is right, I'm kind of a cocky guy. And in my mind, I had no doubt that he was going to clean me up really good. But life has surprises, which is kind of the gist of my story. So he put me in with this steel worker. I forget his name. But, you know, the guy had a full goatee. I didn't even have facial hair at the time. And he really began to whack away at my head. And he was so much bigger and stronger than myself, and much more aggressive, that he was doing a number on me. So we went through the first round, took our 1-minute rest. I think it was around the second round, could have been the third round, that my trainer was off where I couldn't see him, off in the corner there, unscrewing the cap to the bottle of smelling salts for me, because it was just presumed that any minute this guy was going to knock me out. You may be asking, why didn't my trainer stop it? And I don't have the answer to that question. Remember, his theory was you're getting an education. Anyway, he was screwing the cap off the smelling salts. Now, one thing I've always done, and we were talking last week about practicing, whatever I've done, and to this day, whatever I do, I commit to it. And when I commit to it, I practice. So if I want to learn something new, I begin asking questions, find people who know what they're talking about, read books on the subject, and I have a couple of endeavors that I'm involved in now, and maybe some more in the future, where I'm going to be, learning. But if I commit myself to it, then whatever I'm taught, I practice. Well, it was the same with boxing. I would go to the local YMCA. That wasn't where we had the boxing club, but then I would go down to the local YMCA and I would practice what my trainer taught me. They had a heavy bag down there, and I would at that time I used to hit the heavy bag for 1 hour straight, no stopping, no breaks, no rest, nothing. And then I would just jab. I don't know, I can maybe count to 100. Then just the right hand, another 100. Then hook, left hook, 100 times. Then combinations, hook, jab, hook, right, jab, hook, right. And what happens is, and I think I mentioned this last week, your body builds up muscle memory. It just will start to do things automatically without thinking about it. Well, while I'm in whatever round it was, second, third round with this gorilla, who's really beating the mess out of me, I noticed all of a sudden there was this, well, first of all, lack of pain, and this kind of like silence. Then off here where the other steel workers were all standing around watching, there was a kind of like a gasp. And I'm very dazed. I'm trying to figure out what has been happening. Remember, I'm getting hit in the head a lot and fast. And then what has just transpired, because all of a sudden, not only is there no pain, and not only is there no sensation of being whacked around in the head, but my opponent, my sparring partner, so to speak, is gone. And I'm looking around, and my trainer is just about jumping up and down in the air with this big smile on his face. Now I look at the other steel workers, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. What has just happened? The other steel workers are having a good laugh. And then all of a sudden I saw this, let me call him a gorilla. Picture a gorilla, except he's shaved here and he got a goatee, laying on the floor, on his back. And I still didn't know what happened. Well, that was it. And they, the trainer was unlacing. The other guy went over. He was quite dazed. Went over to his friends while I was having my, and all the trainer kept saying is, "Oh, that was great. Oh, that was great." I still didn't know what happened. So after everybody had left, and my trainer used to pick me up and drop me home, he was explaining to me what happened. What happened was, again, muscle memory. Now I'm getting whacked around the head, so I'm not thinking too clearly. I'm not even sure what's going on. And what happened was, as all those hours and hours of practicing and practicing and practicing, and I remember learning this from a boxer who had trained with Angelo Dundee, that you throw your uppercut this way, not this way. So that you bring your fist up and you got the humerus here locked in, and pow, it hits under the jaw in a very square fashion instead of sort of coming back at your opponent's chin. And he said you threw a jab and all of a sudden came up with this uppercut and just knocked him flat out. Well, I got to tell you that to this day, that's one of the highlights of my, well, certainly of my boxing career. But just as an aside, what ever became of my boxing career? Did you know? Providence. I failed the Golden Glove physical. I still have an article at home that has me slated for all these great things. But from a kid, I had high blood pressure. You already know I have heart disease, and I couldn't pass the fitness test down there at the Felt Forum in Madison Square Garden. And there was some other dynamics too. God was starting to reach my life. I was 19, almost 20 years old, and I was starting to think through. My whole attitude was changing, and that was part of it as well. But yeah, I failed the Golden Glove physical, so that was pretty much after that. A few years later, at the end. But here's an example of what I was talking about Thursday and Friday. That constant practicing. At a moment when I couldn't think at all, forget about thinking straight, I couldn't think at all, my muscles just took over. Whap, boom. And he was gone. And remember, my brain is scrambled. But my muscles just took over. But I had been practicing for hours, combinations of punches, whap, and he was gone. And I didn't even know I did it. Well, I think if you were with me Thursday, Friday, I think that you should be able to make the connection between what I was sharing with you as a lesson and what I am exhorting you to do, counseling you to do with your symptoms, your nervous symptoms, is to practice. Because there will come a time when symptoms that you're having will be dealt with from your practice. And I also use the word resoluteness. I think we have one of the local chapters of the Hells Angels or somebody coming by. Never fails. Alright, here goes the last one just now. Your muscles will just take over for you if you do as I have done in any endeavor I committed to. Well, starting with the Bible. Wasn't the first, but starting with the Bible. Working out, music, playing the guitar. When I first started playing the guitar, remember my first instrument was rudimental drumming, and I was a champion at 13, New York State champion at 13. I played for 6 to 8 hours a day. Now, a lot of this has to do with the way my mind is geared. I don't expect you to be like me. My mind is wired to do something and just throw yourself 100% into it. But when I first started, and I'm self-taught on the guitar, I practiced 6-8 hours a day. Just sit there and just keep playing until I had the fretting of chords down and what have you. And I also sang. And it was just something that I do. Practice. So with the story of my life that I'm giving you today, of how I was able to knock out a gorilla who outweighed me probably by 50 or more pounds, all muscle, tough guy. I wasn't quite the tough guy I eventually became as I grew up. But at the moment, I was just a scared kid trying to survive, which nobody really gave me a chance to survive. Then all of a sudden, muscle made me, bap, bap, whap. Down he went. But I have to remind you, or say it again, he went down without me consciously doing it. This is what practice does. It helps the muscles and also the brain to build up habits that you will be able to use, and especially after the practice has been repeated and repeated and repeated, and it becomes a habit, as we talked about that as well, habits. And you'll get to the point where you won't even realize that you're doing it because it comes so natural. And this, by the way, is the Magna est consuetudinis. Great is the power of habit. But if you don't practice, you're going to slip back into old habits, bad habits of panicking when you get symptoms, hysterical, calling everybody up on the phone, writing to everybody, talking about it all the time. And those are bad habits. You are reinforcing the idea of danger that's coming from your symptoms in the brain when you do that. As I mentioned this week, it's time to draw a line in the sand and challenge your symptoms by no longer giving in to them. And remember, your body is your friend. The body's not doing anything wrong. It's broken. And thankfully, with nervous symptoms, you can fix it. And you fix it by drawing a line and no longer letting yourself be dominated by these symptoms. Again, detaching the thought of danger from the mind. Symptoms will still keep running their course, and you refuse to give in to them. And I think, if I can remind myself, I have to talk to you about how muscles educate the brain, but I don't have the time now. There's quite a few subjects we still need to cover, by the way, and I began this channel, I don't know, what's it been, 4.5 months, not that long, and we are picking up subscribers more and more frequently, but there's a lot of lessons to go through, so I keep encouraging you to stay with me and be with me daily or as much as possible. To finish, what the idea here is, you want to build up habits so that things begin to, in dealing with your symptoms, you begin to deal with them on an unconscious level, but that's a long way down the road. Now you're going to have to do it consciously, and as I mentioned yesterday, with a resolute will. And then in time, you will be doing them unconsciously. In other words, symptoms will calm, the mind will make a real quick translation or interpretation, and the muscles will just do what they're supposed to do by not reacting. And your voice, the muscles that go around your mouth, your tongue as well, won't be screaming, yelling, and calling everybody up. See, it's a habit, and that comes from practice. And to stick with the analogy of this story of my life, it won't be long before unconsciously, with anxiety and depression and mental health, you're going to whap, baby, bing, and it's gone. Look at, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. That is the real, I'll use the word possibility, for you in your condition today. But the practice and the work is on you. I'm giving you as much instruction. I have given you quite a bit of instruction, and there'll be more to come. More to come. But the practice is all on you. If you don't practice, your chances of knocking out anxiety out of your life, knocking out depression, and so on, are just not too good. You don't want my lessons here, to be on theory. You want them to be something that you are actively pursuing by practicing. And in time, this bully of anxiety and this bully of a steel worker of depression, this bad dude from the Bronx, is going to be knocked out by a young kid, in a manner of speaking. So that's the story of my life, or one of them. There'll be more to come, God willing. Let me pray for you. Father, I ask you to help and continue to help my friends who are watching, those who have just recently become my friends. I call them my friends. Give them the will, by your grace, to be able to knock out of their lives anxiety and depression, mental health disorders. And today, even today, give them peace. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, now don't forget, in a series of messages on our other channel, the Time for Truth Ministries. This is message number 5 tomorrow. The title of the messages is Encouraging Words for Discouraging Days, which everybody's dealing with that. And tomorrow's message will be on overwhelmed, but not overcome. So join with me on the Time for Truth Ministries here on YouTube. And if I don't see you tomorrow, then I'll see you on Monday, God willing, for another edition of God's Answers for Anxiety and Depression. Thanks for being with me. God bless.